Book of Fragapatti, son of Ch.5, Chapter 5. When Fragapatti had selected both departments of his council, which comprised 100,000 souls, he said, 2. When a god espouseth a new kingdom, it is customary for him to create his own capital, and to fix the boundaries of his light and hall of audience. But when he hath gods and goddesses for his assistants, it is meet and proper for them to help in the buildings. In this case, I give into your hand to provide this realm. 3. Hardly had his words gone forth when the gods and goddesses stretched forth their hands unto Jehovah, and lo and behold, the elements of the plateau took shape, and there stood the canopy of the new kingdom. Then again they stretched forth their hands to Jehovah, and there came the walls of the house of heaven. And yet again they stretched forth their hands to Jehovah, and there came the floor and foundation. 4. And the house was called the house of Mauru, the place of the throne of Fragapatti in the lower heavens. On the plains beyond the house, Fragapatti created 1,000 fields and pastures, and in each and every one he created 10,000 mansions, and every mansion was capable of 1,000 souls. With roadways from one to another, Fragapatti created them, his host being the workmen, in the wisdom and power of Jehovah. 5. Whilst this work was going on, the marshal who went down to the earth returned, bringing God and his lords with them, and also bringing with them 1,200,000 spirits of the second resurrection. Fragapatti commanded them to bring God and his lords into the house of Mauru, and they were so brought. 6. Fragapatti said, In the name of Jehovah, I salute thee, O God, and thy lords and thy host. 7. God said, In thy name, O Jehovah, am I, and my lords and my host, blessed with great joy, that thou, O Fragapatti, hast come to redeem the earthborn and the spirits of these heavens, is a joyful period in the time of worlds. 8. The Lord said, For ourselves and our host, O Jehovah, do we thank thy son, Fragapatti. 9. Fragapatti said, That thou, O God, mightst know my decrees, I commanded thee and thy lords and thy exalted host hither. Hear me, and to whom I send thee, do thou my commandments, in the name of Jehovah. The time hath come when mortals on the earth shall begin their lessons in spiritual things proven, being themselves made part in the building of Jehovah's kingdom. 10. Through thee, the present reigning God of the earth and her heavens, must be carried out the death and resurrection of thy chosen heir, Zarathustra, to prove first that man on the corporeal earth can live all pure and without sin. Second, that corporeal death belongeth to the earth body of man, and not to the spirit. And third, that after death the same person can rise in spirit and appear to mortals, to be seen and known, after which he shall show his final ascent toward the upper heavens in the arms of his God. 11. Whilst this cometh upon thee in person to carry out, thou shalt also, through my ministering angels, prove to mortals the advantage of virtue and truth over sin and darkness. For thou shalt cause also to be stricken in death 2 evil men who are all impure, and they shall suffer death at the same time with thy heir, Zarathustra. But these shall not have power of themselves to appear before mortals after death. For mortals shall hereafter be a testimony to one another of the reward of virtue and the power of being one with the gods, son of Jehovah. 12. But since all attestation by spirits can be set at defiance by the craft of philosophers, thou shalt not wait till after the death of thy heir to teach the truths of the fathers' kingdoms, but beforehand, causing Zarathustra, whilst yet mortal, to write down rules of mortal life and doctrines and faith and repentance and praise of the Great Spirit and of prophecy, and all manner of righteous gifts, and the power of miracles, and the triumph of the spirit of man over corporeal elements. 13. And when thou hast completed these things, thou shalt bring the spirit of Zarathustra to this house. But the Drooks who suffered death with him, thou shalt deliver in the usual way to the places prepared for the resurrection. 14. Tell me then, how standeth thy heir, and ask thou of me whatsoever thou wilt, to assist thee, to carry out these, my decrees, and it shall be granted unto thee. 15. God said, Zarathustra had attained his 20th year, and comprehendeth the destiny put upon him. He is pure and wise, with faith and gentleness, but he is larger and more powerful than any other man in the world. He is instructed both in the spiritual and corporeal senses, having a knowledge of the books of the ancients, and of writing and making tablets. 16. Fragapatti said, 5 years shalt thou have in which to complete thy labor. Depart, therefore, to thy place, taking with thee such of thy lords and host as thou mayst require. I will appoint 1,000 messengers to travel betwixt thy place and this, and that every day thou shalt ask for this or that, it shall be granted unto thee. To which God replied, 17. I will go now and cause Zarathustra to write a book of wisdom, and give him prophecy over the kings and nations and tribes of men. What I do shall be proven to thee in Mauru. Thus saying, God withdrew a little, and selected his lords and such other assistants as he desired, and after this Fragapatti granted a day of recreation, in which time the Aetherians were made well acquainted with the conditions of mortals and of the thousands of millions of spirits still lingering in the first resurrection, and in darkness and chaos. 18. On the next day, God and his host departed for the earth, well attended by thousands of volunteers from the Aetherian sojourners of Haraiti. Chapter 6. Fragapatti said, The voice of Jehovah cometh to me, saying, My son, appoint thou an assistant chief to sit on thy throne, and go thou around about Atmospheria, taking surveyors and inspectors with thee. For thou shalt see with thine own eyes the condition of thousands of millions of spirits in Hada. 2. Fragapatti said, In Jehovah's name, I announce Athrava, my assistant, God of Mauru. There was great rejoicing in the council at this. Then came Athrava forward, and ascended Jehovah's throne, and sat on the right hand of Fragapatti. Aetherian lights fell upon the place from every side, and Fragapatti gathered from the elements and made a crown for Athrava, and crowned him. 3. Officers and workmen were sent to build a conveyance for Fragapatti, and for such attendants as he might take with him. So the next day Fragapatti chose his companions, 30,000, making Verethragna speaker, and he and they departed for their inspection of Hada and the earth. 4. His ship was built without lights or curtains, so they might travel unobserved. First he inspected the plateau of Haraiti, which prior to this had never been inhabited, and he found its distance from the earth was equal to 10 diameters of the earth, and its east and west and north and south diameters corresponded in size to what the earth would be were that volume. That is to say, the superficie of the plateau was 528,000 miles in every direction, and in the ratio of the number of mortals on the earth, this plateau would inhabit 528,000 million souls, and yet this was not the 1,000th part of the number it could sustain, in fact, within and without. 5. Fragapatti said, Such is Haraiti, O Jehovah, and yet there have been, till now, no spirit to come and inhabit it. Who can survey thy works, O Father? Who shall fear for the limit of thy handiwork? 6. Verethragna said, And yet we shall find in the lowest Hadas spirits huddled together like bees in a hive. And yet wherefore, O chief? For is it not so with mortals also? They cluster together in cities and tribes, warring for the inches of ground, whilst vast divisions of the earth lie waste and vacant. 7. Fragapatti said, Is this not the sum of the darkness of mortals and of spirits in the lowest realms? They know not how to live. A spider or an ant is more one with their Creator than these. 8. Next day they visited Seredho, 6 diameters of the earth distance. Here they found a colony of 2,000 million spirits that had been founded by Osir 3,300 years before, but not the same people, but such as came up from the earth afterward. They had a god named Hoab, an atmospherian from the earth, 2,100 years. And he was upright and wise, and of good works most excellent, but knowing nothing of Etheria, had no ambition to rise thither, and his content had visited itself on the colony, and they were contented also. 9. Fragapatti said, To remain here forever, is this the extent of thy desire, O Hoab? And Hoab answered him, saying, Yea, master, what more is life than to reach the highest place and remain there? To which Fragapatti said, Is this the all-highest? And Hoab said, Yea, master, any place and condition is the all-highest, if man make it so. None can attain higher than I, no people higher than my people. We are freed from the earth and Hada, and we desire not to return thither, nor to go any other place. 10. Fragapatti said, Let us walk a little, that I may see thy kingdom. Hoab consented, and they walked along, seeing the inhabitants lying at ease, some amusing themselves weaving threads of light, then unraveling them and weaving them over again, others playing with crystals and lenses and opaque and transparent elements, but not one doing anything for another, nor, in fact, needed they, for all were capable of doing for themselves. Now after they had travelled a while, Fragapatti said, Hast thou not, O Hoab, a desire to return to the plateaus below thee, where the inhabitants are in misery and darkness, and bring them into thine own realm? To which Hoab said, 11. Nay, master, let them shift for themselves. Even if we help them up, they would be thankless. Nay, my doctrine is, man is the highest of all things. The elements are dumb. The worlds are many and wide. Let man choose a corner for himself, and there settle forever. Fragapatti asked, Because a man chooseth the corner, is it necessarily his own? Hoab said, Our place was bequeathed us by our forefathers. Of course it is ours, and to remain so forever. Neither suffer we any other spirits to settle in our dominions. Being far away from the rest of the world, we are not much molested. 12. Fragapatti said, How came ye hither? Hoab said, Long ago there came a god hither named Osir, bringing 6,000 million jujas up from the earth. With them he founded a colony here, with factories, colleges, hospitals, and all things necessary to enlighten the people, giving them ample teachers. In course of time, many of the inhabitants migrated away from this place, and it was almost depleted of its people. But the gods below this sent new supplies of inhabitants, of which we are the second and third installments. So we inherited the place, with all its factories and educationals and other places. 13. Fragapatti said, As ye were raised up by the gods of other places, would it not give ye joy to raise up others who are still in darkness? Hoab said, Nay, master, we are pure and refined. The atmosphere of Jujas is unpleasant to us. They would vitiate our own happiness, besides entailing toil and responsibilities upon us. We cannot mix with any people but the refined and holy. We take care of ourselves. Let others do the same, and all will be well. 14. Fragapatti said, Who thinkest thou I am, and my people with me? Hoab said, Visitors from some far-off realm, who are either discordant with yourselves or bent to meddle in the affairs of other peoples. We have had visitors before, and we never grieved when they left us. To which Fragapatti replied, 15. Thou art strong in thy philosophy. Had no nation or people such ambition as this, there would be no content in the world. To be satisfied with one's own self and behavior is to be a god in fact. Hadst thou nothing to fear from immigration coming to thy shore, or to fear from some new philosophy undermining thy long-established convictions, thou mightst indeed be the happiest of gods, and thy people the happiest of people. 16. Joab said, True, thou perceivest wisely. Oh, that there was nothing to fear, nothing to dread, forever. 17. Then Fragapatti said, And I declare unto thee, Joab, that the condition can be attained, for I have seen kingdoms in heaven so fortified. And wert thou and thy people prepared to receive the sacred secrets pertaining thereto, I would most willing unfold them before thee. Joab said, Thou art a wise God. Tarry thou and teach us. 18. Fragapatti said, I am now on a journey and cannot remain longer, but on one condition. I will return hither and disclose these matters, so that never more shalt thou fear for immigration into thy country, nor for any philosophy which any man or god may teach. Exact a promise of secrecy from all thy people. Joab said, It shall be done. 19. And Fragapatti and his host withdrew, and departed out of the plateau, promising to return when notification had been served on his people. But Fragapatti inspected the whole superfice, and found it capable of educating and providing for 100,000 million spirits, whereas there were but 2,000 million in Joab's kingdom, and they inhabited only a small corner of the plateau. Nevertheless, Joab laid claim to the whole. 20. After this, Fragapatti descended to the next plateau, the first great plateau above the earth, called Aowasu, signifying land and sky world, for the first spirit life after mortal death. Aowasu hath its foundation on the earth, and it's undulated with mountains and valleys like the earth, having seas over the corporeal seas. And the outer superfice of Aowasu is from 20 to 100 miles above the earth's surface, and it is habitable within and without, after the manner of all spirit worlds. But the first resurrections were within it and on the earth's surface, and the second resurrection mostly on its superfice, though all atmospherian plateaus are also made for the second and third resurrections. On the roadway betwixt Aowasu and Zeredho, next descending, it was that Osiris established Vibraj, which was now so depleted of its people that Fragapatti halted not to examine it, but proceeded to Aowasu direct. 21. Here lie the mountains of morn and eve, and mountains of the moon and sun and stars, chief of which groups are 22. Ushadaho, Ushadarena, Eresdifia, Fraurepa, Ezora, Arezura, Today, Bumya, Doitya, Raudita, Mazasavao, Autare, a place of light inhabited by Huda, lord of Vouta, Ereasho, Varagaiko, a place of ooze, signifying torments because of its darkness. 23. This group of mountains is 90 miles higher than the earth's mountains of Japheth. South of these are Adarana, Ayana, Isakara, Samya, Kanaka Tafegrao, Vara, and the double mountain, Hamanakana, 8 ranges of the round mountains, Fravanku, the 4 peaks, the Vidwana. 24. These extended over the earth's mountains of Shem, and have an altitude above the earth of 100 miles. These are the oldest inhabited spirit worlds since the submersion of Pan, whose spirit worlds are carried up to a higher heaven, which hath since been called Haraiti. 25. Extending east and west lie the group called the Red Men's Group, Aizaka, Mainaka, Vakendrake, Akaya, Tudhake, Ishvahyaka, Draushivau, Kairivau, Nanhushmau, Kaya Yuyu, Autaren Kaihe, Karayai, which were the first places in heaven for colonizing the spirits of the Aihuan race. 26. The next group lieth to the west and south, which are Gichendava, Ihuna Varya, Regamna, Akaya, Asha Timbana, Urinyovakdike, Asna Hovao, Ushaoma, Ustagerenao, Saymakama, Sayamaka, Bafrayotso, Vafrayao, Vaurusha, and Uasakao. 27. To the south of this group are the towering eagles, which are Ijatara, Adhutuvavata, Septimavaranao, Sepentodata, Asnavoaya, Kairo Gakai Vakao, Tauraiosa, Baroyo, Barokrayama, Frayapoa, Udirya, Usayao Kava, Revao, all of which groups were named by the gods and lords of the intermediate worlds during the time of the Yaiha language amongst mortals, being named after the amalgamation of the tribes of Ihans, every syllable in formal ages being one tribe, whereof the gods have made this testimony to endure from before the time of Fragapatti and Zarathustra, wherein it may be proven to mortals and the spirits that this division of the spirit world was revealed to man at the time language was carried to its highest compounding. 28. Besides these mountains in the lowest heavens, there were 4,000 others, the names of which were duly registered in the libraries of heaven by Thor and his subgods, but more than 2,000 of them were uninhabited, owing to the fact that Jehovah had not as yet created a sufficient number of people for them. But the mountains here mentioned above were those, chiefly, where, at the time after Apollo, the false gods and false lords set up kingdoms of their own, and the names of the mountains are also the names they espoused unto themselves. 29. Fragapatti said, Alas, these heavens, who can measure the vanity of men and angels that cut loose from the Great Spirit, endeavoring to set up kingdoms on their own account? Their places perish, sorrowful histories. Behold these vagrant spirits, strolling about or hiding amidst the ruins, ashamed of their rags and nakedness, prowling around, millions of them, hundreds of millions. 30. Varithragna said, I thank thee, O Jehovah, that I am once again amongst the lowest. Keep me, O Father, amidst this darkness, till I shall never again forget the lowest of my brothers and sisters. I behold thy wisdom, O Jehovah, but for these cycles of time, and the dawns of which thy Etherians can come down to witness the bounding in hell, they would themselves forget the horrors. Oh, that thou wilt not suffer me to rest till I have helped to raise them up to know thee, and to be a glory within thy works. Chapter 7. Fragapatti surveyed Eowasu in all the morn of east birth, and his officers enumerated the spirits and recorded their condition, and then he called his conductors, saying, 2. I have measured the morn of the east birth. Take me now to the setting eve of death. 3. So the ship, with his passengers, was raised a little and started for the west, running low over the regions lying west of Ham, Shem, and Japheth. Fragapatti said, 4. I perceive. The plan of the gods on this star was to complete its inhabitation by going westward. For this reason, I will see where they designed to have the eve of death and the birth of the Father's kingdom on their corporeal part. 5. When they came to the Atlantic Ocean, Uzochia, they raised their ship still higher and sped across for the regions inhabited by the Ihans and Ihwans. 6. Arriving thither, they came to Ipsogi, a region in the lower heaven where Hapacha, lord of the Ihans, had a kingdom of 70 million souls, many of whom were Ihwan spirits. Here Fragapatti halted and made fast his ship, remaining 7 days, and Hapacha receiving him and his hosts, and entertained them. And during the time of their sojourn, Hapacha sent his Otivan out to round over all the heavens belonging to Gautama, north and south, taking the surveyors and inspectors of the host of Fragapatti into all inhabited places, so they could complete their records. 7. In the meantime, Hypatia conducted Fragapatti throughout his kingdom, exhibiting the factories, schools, colleges, hospitals, and all such places as belonging to the second resurrection. 8. Fragapatti said to Hypatia, In thee and thy kingdom I am well pleased. Thou shalt hear from me ere many days. At present I must depart. So Fragapatti told not who he was, nor what was his mission, but gathering together his hosts, departed, still going westward, until he completed the circumference of the earth. 9. Now will I again go around the earth, said Fragapatti, and inspect mortals and their kingdoms. So his conductors now ran the ship just above the lands, being guided by messengers familiar with the earth and with all the habitable places. And they zigzagged their course, going into all kingdoms and into all large cities and into forests and plains, determining the condition of the earth and its capabilities, as well as the conditions of mortals and their capabilities. 10. And when Fragapatti had completed this latter inspection, he returned to Mauru in Haraiti, and the whole time of his absence was 77 days. 11. And all the records obtained on the expedition were immediately filed in Mauru, where the High Council and all others who chose could read them. And on the third day thereafter, Fragapatti resumed the throne of Jehovah, and was prepared to found anew the kingdoms of Atmospheria, and also those of earth, to overthrow or set aside what was not good, and to raise up both mortals and spirits who had proved themselves worthy.